So we're going to look at sunflower tonight. So as always, we should always start off by looking at the source material. So here is the picture of the sunflower that we're working from. I've chosen this one because it's not the traditional front-on kind of view that you see of a sunflower, because I think that's quite, I mean, they look lovely like that, but it's quite a familiar image. And I thought it'd be quite nice to try something with this slightly different angle to give us a different kind of depth to the flower shape. So if we're looking at it, when you're thinking about something like this, I think you need to try and start off by seeing it in quite bold areas of shape without worrying too much about detail. The detail will come later, because what you're really seeing is you've got almost like I would say rectangle, but on an angle, a sort of slanted rectangle of yellow through the middle, like almost like a very strong diagonal like shape through that. And then we've got dark sort of triangles on either side. So you really want to try and break the image down into its simplest components, and then we start with the biggest sort of shape and the biggest brush strokes, and then we can tighten and go down and down into more detail. But if we just get the sort of like areas broken down into big shapes first, and then we go smaller and smaller. So we're going to start literally by putting a big slice of yellow onto our paper and then some green either side, and we're not going to think about detail, even though our instinct is to go in for detail because flowers are very detailed and they have this sort of very delicate quality. We're going to be quite bold, and then we're going to almost start on an abstract level and then sort of gradually go in for more and more detail and more definition, because it's sort of like almost like painting from the inside out as opposed to painting from the outside in. So we're going to try and reduce it into its simplest forms. We've got to remember that the whole thing about watercolour, we have to sort of maintain some white on the page because that's our lightest colour. So we're going to use quite a pale yellow to begin with. I will be using my fabulous famous square brushes, but just for a little bit at the start to get the main sort of colour in. I don't think I'm going to wet the paper too much because I don't want there to be too much carried away. I was going to say, so I don't want to get the paint as much. So I don't want to get the paint to get too carried away to begin with. But I don't want, although we're going to be quite bold and sort of abstract, we don't want it to be completely too lively and too sort of taken away. But I'm just going to paint a sort of diagonal section across the paper. And again, I'm using quite a textured watercolour paper because I think it just gives you so much more to play with. But I'm seeing a sort of diagonal sweep of water. Now the first bit's going to be in yellow, so I hope it's going to not be too, I hope it will come out on the camera that you'll actually see it. I'm using quite a pale yellow, something with quite a lot of green in it, that sort of more lemony kind of colour to begin with. I just want to push that onto the paper first, because that's, if you think about it, this is going to be our kind of highlights. So it's going to feel weird doing this because it's just going to not feel like a flower to begin with. But I want to get just a sort of sweep of colour on first, like that. And then thinking about the kind of orange that we've got going on here, there's kind of orange happening round that sort of centre. So I'm just seeing those orange, and I'm just pushing my brush on and just pulling them down to where petals might come in the future. So I can see there's a sort of curve happening here. That's where my centre is going to go darker in here, but then I'm just pressing the square brush on and flicking that brush up and round, so I can just sort of get a rough sense of there being petals there. This I'm going into my kind of orangey yellow, sort of quite straight on. Then I know I've got a petal kind of flicking down over the surface, and don't worry at this stage about is it in the right position. It's not really, don't really have to worry about that too much. We just want to kind of map out the bits of our painting. Then I can see I've got this sort of sideways petal here, so I'm just going to flick a paint in to be that. We'll tidy them up later. We'll bring some order to the chaos, and that's fine. And then just maybe with this one up here, just lifting that brush up onto the surface there. And then I've got these ones down here as they come down and round and pull down the page like that, and then just some sort of short sets. Try and see them just as the shapes that they are. Don't worry about is that a petal shape. Just try and see that shape as it is, rather than worrying about making it look like a petal, because that will come. So we've got sort of some yellows kind of there. This side here, I'm now thinking I can bring this side a bit bigger. I can just bring it out in quite a big sort of sweep coming across. And so I'm hoping that that the camera is getting the detail. I'm just going to try lighting it, seeing if that helps, if that's way too much light, but it's not really helping that, is it? No, we'll turn that one off because it's actually easy on the soft light. But she should be sort of seeing, although it is just like brush marks, we're sort of seeing a shape of the flower kind of appearing. Obviously this centre at the moment is still bright yellow. We're going to come back with that later. So we're just sort of thinking about the sort of petal placements. Maybe I might put another one here. And as I always say, nobody or very few people are going to see the original, your source material, and line them up and say, well, that petal is 2 millimeters away from where it should be. It's not about that. It's about trying to get the feel of this sort of flower. And then up here, I can take a few more, and you can do some lovely strokes up, just twisting the brush around just to sort of pull those petals up and around, and hopefully you're getting that sort of movement coming across. I don't want to go too dark with the greens, but I do want to get some green in there, so I'm going to again start with a very light green next, just to think about where the leaves and the foliage will go. So you can do really the palest green you've got. It's a relatively yellowish green again, so I'm just using a very sort of light a little bit of emerald green and then a little bit of that sort of yellowy green, and I want to keep it quite wet. I don't want it to be too strong, so I'm just going to kind of again get a sense of I can see that I've got my stem of the flower is sort of coming in sort of almost like a third of the way down, so there's going to be a sort of line there for stem. Don't worry about now if it's being really crude or it looks really childish. I'm so sorry, just 1 second. I'm just doing a class, honey, so there's lots of people watching me, so you're going to have to, yeah, that was one of our kid visitors just asking me what am I doing. And then, so I'm just going to put in my stem in like that. So I'm not worrying about where it's joining at the moment. I'm just thinking, then I've got the green sort of up behind here, so these will all get darker in time, but we're just going to use the brush just to sort of like, it's sort of like the shape is sort of like a half moon, isn't it, of green kind of behind the flower head. And it doesn't matter if the shape is not the right shape yet, we can tidy it up, and if there's, you know, bits of leftover shape as it were, I'm literally just putting that shape in like a sort of green, so like a sort of half moon, like a sort of, it's like a cup really, the flower, isn't it? When you see this angle, you see that it is almost like a bell or a cup, so it's got that sort of round feel. There's a leaf going up here, sort of disappearing off the side, and then we've got some leaves coming down here, and we've got this sort of twist of leaf appearing, and we're just putting this in really lightly because we can come back and add tone and add darkness later, but we just want to kind of get a sense of where everything is happening. And then behind this main leaf here, we're getting a green sort of background in there, so I'm just gonna bring some green in behind that, and you see that helps to define that petal shape, because what I'm really doing is painting the space around that petal, and it's a leaf, so it's green, but you know, that's what I'm doing. And then that somehow gives me a clue as to how I want to get this leaf shape in. I'm just gonna have to move my picture over a fraction, and there is some more green going on down here. We may get to that bit, we may not, but we know we can sort of wash some green into the background. We can keep it just as a kind of as an abstract area of green. We may add more detail to it. May just keep it as greenness on the bottom. And of course the background is very dark as well. I'm not going to rush to darken that in. That's something that I might do a bit later. I may decide to leave it with a whiter background, but we'll see, because again it's going to be a lot of pigment to kind of build that up. Right, so I've got the sepals, I believe it is, or there is a word for it, isn't there? The sort of husky bit of the back of the flower here. There's quite a nice moment at the back here where we get this sort of little, like a sort of thumb at the back of the leaf almost. So I think I want to make sure that's definitely in there. That's sort of, we can work on that later, but just to sort of bring that in. We've got some dark layer shapes kind of through here. It's like a triangle shape just coming in around there. So that's kind of a little bit of darkness in there. This shape here, it's got to be more of a leaf, not a stem. So let's give it a bit more of a curve. And then on here I can see there's just a little bump of kind of whatever these leaves are. It almost looks like an artichoke, doesn't it? Like the sort of the petals on an artichoke heart when you see them together, if you've ever eaten one. And there's a little sort of spur coming up there, isn't there, of a sort of another little leaf just sort of popping up the top there. So really still just trying to see these as quite abstract shapes. Then I've got down here, this is there's quite a lot of shadow on this side, isn't there? And I can see this, there's like a strong petal shape here, but it's really underlined with shadow. So I'm going to risk just putting in that as a shadow just to define that bottom petal. I can see that line sort of quite strongly. Not going to worry too much about being terribly accurate, but we're going to add some yellow. We can always add some yellows back over that as a kind of glaze of colour to warm that up. But there's definitely this really strong shadowed section coming down there, and then that's coming into that leaf. So I need to stop that. I'm going to run some paint and water across that, so that's definitely coming behind. And so I've come on the front, and then I've taken some water and I've just pulled that through that leaf shape just to sort of get rid of that point. So it's definitely sort of coming down behind the one that's in front. And then there's some more shadow and some more shapes just sort of coming down in here, but I think we'll probably come back to that in a bit. Let's just get some of these edges in. What we're trying to do really is we're trying to see not the shape of the petals, but the shape between the petals. So like here, there's quite a strong greeny triangle between these two petals. So this green paint here, that's got to continue down a bit, and then I need to get another bit more of that green triangle in, and that's immediately starting to link those two together. So the head of it is coming round and behind, and there's a little bit of dark green sort of just coming in around there, and then we can see some of these. I think I'm tempted to go around and add some more of these negative space shapes in around the petals, but I think I'm going to swap from using green. So for my background colour, I'm going to definitely add a bit of something different in. I don't want it to be the same colour as the leaves too closely, so I'm going to slightly exaggerate the colour of the background and maybe use some blue. And this is because, you know, this is your painting. You can do what you like with the world that your painting exists in. So like here, this is kind of background, so I'm going to put a much bluer colour in around that, so it's got a feeling a bit of sunshine. And I'm trying to see the shape, the piece of background that I can see through the flower. I'm trying to see that as if it's a shape, like it's almost like a patchwork quilt that I'm filling in. So I'm just going to quite quickly fill those in. But what I'm looking for is to see the background as if it was as important or as strong, as much a part of the flower as the petals are. Because you find that when you're trying to make something look like another thing, your rational brain is very good at coming along and telling you that you've got it wrong. It's sort of like that nosy neighbour that comes and goes, oh, that's not how you want, you know, I don't think. Your brain doesn't know what they're supposed to look like, so it finds it harder to comment and like criticise. So you can see here what I'm doing is trying to see the shape. So instead of seeing that as a petal coming out, I'm seeing as the shape going into a sort of triangle shape that way, the background going into a triangle shape, and then sort of up here I'm getting, you know, a sort of twisty shape sort of coming round, and you know, that way I'm seeing, I can then, I'm leaving the paper white there, and eventually I can get petal colours into that. But doing it that way, you're more likely to. It's funny how easy that makes it to see things, because you're not trying to make something look like a petal. You're trying to make this background area sort of work. So I can see, like on this one here, I'm sort of at the top, so I'm at this sort of bit here. I can see the background is doing this kind of like swirl, and then it's kind of going up. And again, it doesn't matter if you don't get it perfectly, but trying to see the shapes that the background makes between the petals will help you get closer, I think, than trying straight away to paint the petals. And then next to that swirl, there's like quite a sort of big triangle of background that comes in and down. And obviously I've got more, my flower is close to the top of the page, because I'm not bothering to paint in all that background above it, because I don't, you know, that's not very interesting. So I've just sort of painted that there, but then you can see that's starting to give me the shapes for these sort of, that can become these shapes through here. And then it's going to flick back over that, the background's going to come over that petal, and a sort of bit coming up there, and then we've got coming in here around this leaf. Well, there's sort of again a blunted triangle shape of background coming in round, and that's just starting to give me that to put that in. Just to sort of, and I can go back later and I can put more colours in, I can put more blue in, I can get carried away with that background a bit later, but it's just to kind of see where I am. Then on this side here, we've got this bit of background coming in around up to here, like that there, and then down here, I'm getting some more quite like sort of fingers of background, quite sharp triangles coming in to here. You can simplify that down. You don't need to paint every single petal. You've got enough to have 2 or 3 triangle shapes coming in there. That will give you the feeling of that section, taking it round into that leaf. And then once you've got some strokes in for the background, you can get some quite watery pigment and just soften those down, so we're not gonna, you can blend in the brush strokes a bit more. And then just round here, just to bring those sort of ones in, and there we go. And that's just, so I've managed to get basically some background in the whole sort of area, and it's starting to give that. It's given our flower, which is different from the photograph, it's given the flower that we're creating here some space and some kind of contrast, and then it's also allowed to show where our petals are going to come. So we're now going to be working on our petals inside that white space. I'm just going to very quickly grab my water. I've got a very dry throat, so I'm just going to mute for 1 second. Seriously, you really need to keep the noise, down, because they can hear you and they get, sorry guys. There we go. So that's just given that like a second to dry as well. So we've got through here, there's this very dark area of paint or colour around here, because we've got this sort of dark centre of the flower where it's going to meet here. It's a very strong sort of crescent shape, but again, because it's turned to its side, what we're seeing is this sort of quite abstract shape. It's not the traditional, what we're used to, the big round shape. We've also got this strong area of where the shadow is coming. We've got this again, this sort of like strong sweep echoing that round there, and you've got this sort of very dark patchy through here. So these are the areas that we're going to need to build up to begin with. So I'm going to swap to a roundish brush. I think from now on it's going to be more of a round brush project, and I realised when I started to say that's quite a difficult thing to say, and it came out quite well. So a round brush project. I'm going to be choosing some orange, and we want to sort of take some sweets. I'm going to think about those petals first. What's quite nice is this strong light here. You can almost see there's like a very strong line of shadow kind of coming through there. So I'm just going to start with a fairly watery orange, but I'm not going to do huge long strokes again, because I don't want to lose my light that's on here. I want to keep that. So I'm just going to start imagining where I've got that line of the centre. I can just take some brush strokes just sort of halfway and up, and kind of bring them just partly up those sort of petals with that sort of yellow just sort of coming up through there. And then these are quite bright, so, and then I can see some sort of orangey darker shadows coming in underneath, so that's going to give those a bit more depth. And then round about here on this side, we're getting quite a dark side, aren't we? It's really quite strong shadows kind of coming around there, so I can bring some shading on there and just try and see these areas of shadow and light at first without worrying. It sounds ridiculous to say without worrying the shape of the petals, but just try and again see the shapes of the shadow that we've got. There's a very high lit bright petal here, isn't there, on this side, that's like a slice of light, and then we've got some darker orange again, sort of coming through and round. And in here, in this triangle here, again, quite a strong dark slice sort of through there. That's it. And then round about here, we're getting there's a great well of shadow in here, which is just sort of inside there. And we can always come back, we can make it a bit tighter, but I'm sort of tempted to do loads, and I don't want to do too much because I don't want to go too dark in some bits, so I might just come back with light. So I'm just kind of leaving abstract bits of sort of light. These petals down here, they're darker on this side, but there's a lot more green tone in them, isn't there? There's got a lot more green happening. And these ones down here, I'm going to slightly come over that bit of green with the orange, because it's almost like an underpaint again, because there's the petals here, but where I've painted green, I'm now going to come on the top with orange, and that's going to give that just that bit of shadow. So it's starting to sort of using that green like a sort of underpainting. So for these ones on the sort of far right hand side of the painting, I think that's working quite well to cool down my yellow. So I'm going to do that again here. I'm going to put some green onto this side first. It's still quite a pale green, but it's just going to help to cool down the yellow and sort of knock it back a bit. And I'm going to put some green into this side here, where it's definitely shadowed. The edge of this sort of petal, you may not have the exact petals, but an equivalent or something around there. And then these ones down here, sort of just that bit down there, I sort of want to leave that section quite bright, but then down, just because that's going to almost act like an underpaint. And I think on this section here, although I've got orange on here, I'm still going to go in with a little bit of this green just to, and if it goes too green, I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to work some orange on top of it just to sort of cool it down. So these ones, at the moment, they're going to be like green petals, and then again under here a bit more green, because that's going to take it darker, because this is sort of where it's sort of shadowed. So at the moment that looks like I've painted the petals green, but what I'm going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to put some orange on top of that and sort of get that tone it down into the warmer tones, but it's going to act, as I said, like a sort of bank of shadow. And looking at this sort of like area here, I know we haven't done this bit yet, we'll get there. This one here, this is really, really dark. We've got really intense dark shadow, so I'm going to do blue. There's a bit of blue onto here to make that into a really strong, intense shadow against that green. So if I do want to then come put greens over the top, again, it's going to be like our underpaint. So quite a strong blue, quite dark. I don't think we can be too, apart from painting black on it, I don't think we're going to be too strong on this. I think we can really come in with a really strong green, it's a really strong blue to get this really shadowed effect in contrast to the brightness of the petals. So it definitely is going to be dark into that edge round there, and just there's kind of like a little bit of petal there, slightly missed it, but I'll just leave that space, and we'll try putting some orange over it, and if it really doesn't work, we'll just paint it out and pretend it wasn't there. So let's put that area of shadow into that, so it's really starting, and this little triangle of green, that's the same kind of colour as well, so that sort of comes across there. So that's hopefully starting to get some shadow into that really strongly. And then up in here, this is going to come across, and there's sort of like this sort of like area of shadow here where this petal, this sort of like set part of the leaf on the base of the flower is kind of curled up, so it's like quite a strong dark greeny shadow needs to go in there, sort of in around there, and all those are going to stay quite bright, and that's going to be sort of quite dark. And then we've got to have we can leave that light at the moment. And then this leaf up here, this has got a really dark flick, isn't it? So there's like a really strong curl of dark bluey green kind of coming through there like that. And then the bottom of and in the stem as well, because it's quite a sort of three-dimensional shape, there's shadow on the underneath part of that. There's almost like a white fuzz isn't there, of sort of furriness on the top of on the top of that stem, but there's definitely a shadow kind of coming through here. And then I think looking at this section down here, I want to bring that darkness through, because then you've got the diagonal of the petals kind of yellow going that way, and I want to bring this through as a kind of diagonal in opposition to that, to kind of get some dynamic, because it's there, and also I think it'll make it look very dynamic. So I'm going to then bring, while I've got that colour, bring that colour down into here, just sort of to hopefully draw your eye through that way. Because I think you also have to think about, when you're doing a painting, you're not being a camera, you're not just taking a picture of what's in front of you, you also kind of are being like a graphic designer. You know, you've got to design, you can design drama and action into the picture, so that even something that's apparently a very sedate still life, you know, that can still have drama and movement, and drama and movement in it. Let's just stop there, that's enough for it to have. And that sort of is then going to give, and that's what you think about when you think about the design of the picture. So by having these sort of colours coming this way and then the others coming that way, it's just a bit more lively, and why it's such an effect. This is such an interesting image. Again, this sort of edge here, this is so bright, this yellow, I'm quite tempted to come in, certainly here on this one, and just add some of that very dark colour. Let's get a very dark blue and just sort of bring that in around that edge and take it sort of back around through there. That's it. And then I can take all of this section now of the background darker. So again, really thinking about the background as much as what's happening with the flower. I've just outlined that bit to make it easier, because then I'm going to use my bigger brush just to really wash that darker colour into that section there, because I think it's going to hopefully add to the drama of that bright petal in the middle, which we want to keep bright, certainly at the tip. So again, I can just blend those backgrounds in, getting some nice runs and blends happening. Again, those wonderful moments that you can't program, you just kind of have to hope will happen, and then you do, and then go with them. So that's sort of, again, I'm going to come back and we'll work some more on that. I'm just stepping back and thinking, is that all I want with that really dramatic colour? Can that get even darker? I think it could get a little bit even darker in there. I think just through in there, just sort of, you know, again, that could be really strong kind of through there. And there's a little bit of shadow kind of licking in around there. So let's put some of those edges in. Right, now we've got some, what I also noticed is we've got some sort of very punchy kind of shadow in here, but because this is in the flower, it's a much warmer base tone. It's not as cool as where it's on the leaf. So I think this is now where we're going to think about this centre, where we can see we've got almost like a dark outer ring that's coming up into this area here, and then we've got a brighter terracotta colour where the sunlight is catching it. So I think we're going to again go back for a roundish brush, small to medium, that sort of size, and then I think we'll go for a darkish colour first. It's probably going to fade back a bit, so we're probably going to end up going and doing, like, you know, 2 layers of paint at least on this. So let's go for a terracotta. So I've got my orange, but I'm adding in some terracotta into that, and we'll see how that looks. So I can see there's a petal here that is kind of, my middle is kind of coming round here, isn't it? And there's this sort of a lightness here, and this is darker. When I attack the middle section, I'm going to keep, rather than sweeping in the way that we've done sweeps along the petals, this is a much more textured surface. So I'm going to build it up much more with dabs of paint, just sort of like, and that's going to give us that little, that hopefully we can build up the texture. So I'm going to come round some all around the edges here. I'm going to just sort of start dotting it in, just to kind of looking at that centre and following where that's going. This is too light for here, but I'm just going to start off with this all the way around, and then we're going to go in and we're going to sort of build it up in layers, getting darker and darker. So I've got a sort of shape of the centre of my flower, and then it's coming into this gap here. You can see straight away we need to get that centre much darker here, because it's got quite a shadowed feel, hasn't it, sort of here. And then I can bring those, I'm just going to put the little tips of the terracotta colour in, just because there's moments of lightness in that. And then once you've got that just sort of roughly worked out where you want it, we've got to come in darker here. But, you know, we'll come back in. We're now going to go in a bit darker because straight away we're thinking, oh, that's not dark enough, is it? We need to get some more. So I'm going to start with my terracotta base that I had, and then into that it's going to go umber, you know, our favourite word, just to give it that sort of really strong dark tone. Not too wet, relatively controlled, so we can come in and we're just going to start with the tip of the brush, just placing little dark moments, and it doesn't matter if it runs into the background, but you know, we're not going to don't try and do the whole thing in a great big sweep, because we can build up gradually. We can see that down here, yeah, we need to get some dabs of colour in, and we can just sort of keep adding one at a time, really, almost a dab at a time, just building up. So just keep thinking, where am I certain that I need that to be darker? Right, definitely here, so I can definitely add it in here. If I need to blend at any point, I can come with a wet brush and I can sort of stipple into some water into the paint surface, which will soften it. I'm just definitely want to see that layer coming down here. You can see that almost like a line. And again, I'm trying to see the shape of the centre of the flower, and it's that's helping me define the shapes of some of these petals. Again, I'm not trying to paint the petals, I'm trying to paint the spaces around them, and that's helping the petals to start to sort of take shape a bit more. So in here, I've got this middle section a bit fatter on mine. Again, I don't think things like that matter because I'm not trying to do a perfect reproduction. I'm trying to get the sense and the feel of the flower and, you know, the angle and all those sort of things. So if it isn't exactly like the photo, it doesn't bother me. But I think this still gives a really good impression of what the flower is doing and what it's about, and that's what I'm after. Up here into this section, I can see there's a little like window of darkness in here, so I'm just going to try and put that in. Again, if it's not exactly perfect, it doesn't matter, but I just want to get that little hint of background in, and there's another little bit of it just coming into that section here, and that's starting to help show the twist in that petal. So we're just sort of seeing those kind of coming through in here like that. And again, straight away I still think I'm going to need to go darker on that, but that's starting to get that curve of the flower in. I'm going to go back to some of these terracotta tones, because it's funny, the more you look at it, the more you can see some of these darker kind of, so where I've got these petals in here, I've put some green down already, haven't I? But I can come in and it's sort of with that terracotta colour to come round. So instead of using orange, I'm even going into sort of brown tones, and then we can maybe start seeing some of those petals, start thinking where I can define them. And again, try and make the petals work for your picture, so it doesn't matter, as I say relentlessly, if it's not exactly the same as the photo. Just try and make your painting hang together. So we know we've got to have some of these layers, and these ones down here are darker, and these ones kind of come through and they're going to blend into the green, just sort of starting to get some definition into it, sort of coming round. So we see those are definitely dark in there. And if you never know what to do next, you just got to think, well, I can probably work out one sort of brush mark ahead to do. So I can see that, look, somewhere in here there's quite a strong sort of dark area of shadow kind of coming through there. And just up and round here, I've got some yellow here. I don't want the yellow there because it's the shadow, isn't it? So let's just start pushing that out. And then I've got somewhere here, there was that slice of leaf petal which isn't quite in the same position, but I'm going to just keep that kind of coming through round like that. So I'm just seeing some of these shapes, just making sense of the shapes that are there. And then we've got this area back here, haven't we, where we've done the bit of green. So I can see that could have some of that terracotta colour coming all the way almost up over it. Just sort of, and let the brush be quite dry, let the marks be quite dry at this moment, and then they start to have that feeling of the veining on the leaf. And then coming in here, we can bring some more of that sort of veining structure into that leaf, just with the sort of dry, into that petal, sorry, just with a kind of dry brush feel. Now we've got this area around here, again, where it can have a little bit more shadow. So I'm still going in with my sort of terracottas, and I'm going to start adding some of those lines to be those sort of strong shadows, because it's funny how, again, you see how much structure these petals have. You know, we think of petals as being almost like flat, don't we? I think because we're used to seeing those sort of stylized representations of them as being like flat discs, but look at the amount of surface and texture they've actually got in them, these great sort of almost like channels running through them. And I think we can start to bring sort of some of those in, and we're starting to see those as being sort of a bit of structure and a bit of detail. And then down under here again, I can take this section in here, that can go into that terracotta colour, and that sort of pushing that back into shadow again, and just sort of moving those around. And on this one here, look, there's a really strong ridge kind of coming along in that, and then I can see almost all of this should be in dark, and there's like a little tiny chink of light just on that petal. Then I've got this big petal around here, and we've got some big sweeps of those terracotta tones just to make those sort of lines. And, you know, start, if you're not sure, just start gently with a very pale colour, and then you can see them and you've got them in there, and then you might come back and, you know, do some more stronger ones in the end, you know, just to sort of like intensify them later, so that they're there. But we can always work more into them, and, you know, you can be quite nervous to begin with, but then you can sort of build up. And then we've got a triangle of that much darker sort of section coming in under here, and this big leaf, this big leaf petals, I keep calling it leaf, sorry, I mean petal, this has got like almost, this bottom half is actually really quite dark when we look at it. It's got, you know, it's got quite a strong lower half, hasn't it? So let's get that in with a bit more water to get that paint sort of running through. You know, it's like a real darker half, isn't it? That sort of gives us the sort of structure of it. And then there's these very strong sort of, again, into that sunlight area. And there's another bit up here which is sort of almost a greeny tone again, and there's like this quite strong shadow being cast. I can almost do a line sort of like that across it, and then I can paint up to that and sort of darken all of this area, just to use it as a guideline, then sort of paint into it so it disappears and it comes up and round, and that's still part of that flower, that petal there. And then I've got sort of a little extra bit of petal sticking out behind. Again, it's not quite the same shape, and that sort of, given that it starts to see the structure, if you start seeing it as being pools of shadow and light. So I'm going to go and mix a terracotta with an orange, and then this edge here, I put that black there already, like dark brown, that can come stronger, and then I can bring some of these strong colours up again towards that shadow line. So inside the shadowed area, I need to have darker shadows to continue that sort of drama through. And then in here is going to be like quite a dark triangle. So I'm hoping that that's sort of starting to give that petal its sort of structure. And we're getting a similar kind of effect up here. At the moment, it's all quite, you know, it's all got quite confused up here because I've sort of, you know, haven't quite got things where they are in real life. So I'm kind of going to have to make it up. So let's going to make this up a little bit. So, but there's this lovely twist of a petal kind of coming round. So let's at least try and get some twisting lines kind of wrapping round. You know, we can still be quite free with it. We can still see how they move and kind of come round in these sort of shapes. And I think it's what we're, you know, I'm clearly an impressionist. I'm trying to get this feeling of the flower without trying to be really prescriptive about how I do it. If I bring this petal through here, that's just got some of those darker lines kind of running through all the way up into that point. And they can just come up and into there. And then they've got this, I can see this petal sort of turning back here. That's really catching the light. And although it's still really bright, it's still got, we can just see, look, that little line of shadow kind of just getting caught up and dragging down into that area there. And it's quite strong. It's quite strong. I can go stronger than that, I think, on it, just to keep the rest of it really bright and bring the colour sort of into there. And I know you can get really lost in these petals and really confused and thinking, which one is that, which one am I doing? And I'm a bit confused, but I'm just trying to make them work in the picture, you know, so I can see, right, okay, I'm going to just pretend that's the back of a petal curling round because it's not quite the same as the photo, but again, that's okay. I'm going to make that darker and put that into shadow, and it'll kind of hopefully make sense in the picture. And then there's that sort of patch of shadow up on there, and pull them round. And then we've got this very dark edge of that petal, haven't we, which is sort of the background colour, but we can bring that in, so we can go into the kind of blue background in that little, this sort of what I'm talking about, it sounds, there's a little triangle behind this petal, is quite a strong detail. So if I actually then bring that in and paint that in, it's starting to see how that's just made that petal, it's given it its right sort of place on the flower head, and then you've got it sort of coming to this leaf, which has got a slightly different shape on mine, but you know, again, does it really matter? And I'm going to leave the front of that leaf in that pale yellow, yellowy green, and then bring that bit of shadow in around there. So this is what we're going to keep doing. We'll keep going around and keeping on gradually sort of reducing our brush size and coming in with our detail. So I want to go into this dark area here now. It's already lightened up because it's been you know, because it's dried a bit, so it's lighter. So I want to mix up a very sort of dark, almost sort of blackish green, lots of umber, to get my really dark oily tone. It does look very sort of wet and reflective, doesn't it? So I'm going to come back in here with my small brush now, so I'm being a bit more controlled and thinking about some of the shapes. So I've got that sort of spiky, I was thinking like a sort of claw at the back of the plant there, kind of coming round, and this edge here is really dark. So I've got dark in there now, so I'm going to I want to see if there's shapes in the dark, if I can see there's like a little tiny bit of, there's a very dark bit and a slightly less dark bit, so there is sort of shapes and forms in those sort of shadows. This bit is still really just incredibly dark, so I'm going to take that down, and we're using a medium to fine brush now, so we can be a bit more controlled about some of the shapes that are going in there. And then this slice here, this is really dark, isn't it? So we can come under, and maybe look, if I leave that little top section in the slightly paler green and then come in darker, that starts to make that look like the way that's curling back, and it gives it that sort of form. And then I can come in, there's a very complicated bit here that I just can't quite get my head round. I'm not going to lie, I can't quite work that one out with my painting, but there's sort of a bit where I've got a triangle, there's a triangle coming in, and there's like a little layer of dark blue kind of background coming in, and so I'm just got to try and make that work in my picture. And then I can see I've got this edge of this petal here, and there's another kind of curling back one that's kind of in there. So it's just trying to see how can I make this look convincing in my picture. You know, how can I get that to sort of do the thing that I need it to do? And it's got quite a big, like a sort of, I can see this big sort of spur kind of coming across into that pale area and then kind of coming round. So I don't know if that's working, but we're sort of, you know, again, we're not trying to, we can just try and get this to work in the context of our picture. And then up here in this leaf up here, we've got that dark section coming in. I've got that quite big. It's probably not as fat as that, but you know, we can live with that. And then I'm going to come back into this section, because remember how I want to take this colour through, so I want to get this now darker colour again into this sort of section here. So this point down here where that petal is disappearing off into that shadow, that's really quite a strong dramatic moment sort of down there. I've sort of left a wishy-washy area here which I'm kind of going to turn into an edge of light. I'm going to do that just by getting my finer brush again and bringing that along that where I've left that pale paper, and then I can come in and do the shadow underneath that. And it's not the same shape as what's there, but I'm just going to make that element kind of work for me by deciding on a shape. So by painting that dark, and then I can bring that edge and round. And it's sort of doing that shape. It's not the same, but it's giving that impression that there's that leaf edge there. So I can just fill that in kind of dark. I need to put a bit more paint on just to get that last bit in. I hope you're seeing that sort of giving that feel of that, and by leaving that bit of white, I can go in and sort of edit it down. And if I want to refine it, if I want to get it finer, I can go in when I've sort of, and then just almost like chisel it away, just take that down into a really fine line of light on there, with a little tiny bit of shadow kind of coming round, and there we go. That's just taking that and darker, and then down here again that can come darker again, bringing that colour through, and we can get some hints of it in and around there. So that's sort of hopefully bringing that sort of through, increasing that drama. We've got more of it up here because there's actually a leaf kind of coming behind there, isn't there? So let's make a bit more of that, see if we can see that. So we've got a sweep of colour. Now looking at it, I can get this darker colour. This needs to come sort of like through that half of it. So all of that needs to come out darker like that, just of taking that away to give that sort of drama. And then I've got the shape of the leaf kind of coming through here. It's a slightly serrated edge, so I can just put that in just with the brush, sort of working that round and take that through. And I'm quite tempted, I might give it a go, I might not, but I'm quite tempted to to put some warmer tones into the background at the back as well, but we'll get back to that because it is warmer, to give this sort of darker sort of contrast. And I'm going to take my big brush and I want to get some of that dark just into that section there. So I'm just going to get my big brush and that dark colour while I've got it mixed up. And just into that, try and darken that section down again. Because you want to kind of try and keep the background going at the same level. You know, the temptation is to paint, when you're painting like this, painting object, to kind of paint the object first and then kind of like do the background afterwards. And I think ideally you want to try, and I'm going to do some of this darker tone into this bottom corner here now. You want to try and keep all of it going like you're trying to juggle, you know, keep those plates spinning. You know, you're trying to keep the background going at the same time as the object in the foreground, and to get it to work as an image, you want to kind of put as much thought and control into that background, so it's not an afterthought, because it does so much work for you. It really helps to kind of model your picture. Right, this area down the bottom, which you can just see, we haven't done a lot of that, but I think I want to start, while I've got this dark colour, there's a really strong vein, look, which is making that really obviously like a leaf, so I can take some, even if it's quite abstract, but just to sort of get some of that, and get that sort of structure going in here, so this doesn't look just like a random green blob that is turned up, you know, so we can maybe start to make it look a bit more like a leaf, just to sort of bring that through. And there's like a dark, again, a dark sort of pool of shadow kind of coming in around here. And if at any point, like, you do this and you think, oh no, it's too blobby, too square, we'll just come in with some water and just run the wet brush over it just to get it to run and soften, and then you can come back later. But I want that really sharp line there, because there is that really sharp sort of area in that. I want to sort of keep that in there. Right, so we've sort of again reached another point. We've kind of done a layer. This immediately, that is too spiky, so I'm just going to soften that down, just sort of like talking while I do that. And then this stalk in here, I just want to soften that moment of division where that shadow comes in. So now we've sort of take a step back, and I think we need to get some more work into that central eye of the flower and some of the petals as well. just to sort of bring that up. So we can go into some we're going to get our finer brushes out now, the sort of the more delicate detail sort of ones that we've got. Small to me, again, the smaller end of your paint collection, really, not the tiniest, but the smaller end. We're building up to it's sort of like, you know, it's like, if you think of it like a wedge shape. So you start with the larger side of the wedge, and you get smaller and smaller with your brushes. So we're going to go into this centre, and we're going to get some really, we want to be quite bold. So I'm going to let you use black. I know I always seem to say don't use too much black. We're going to mix some black in with the umber, because we want to get some really powerful textural brushwork into this sort of area through here. And you don't often think of watercolour as being like textured in the way that you can texture acrylic and other medium like that, but you really can. You can use the brush to give a different sort of application. So you're dabbing rather than drawing or sort of flicking the brush. I'm just getting that much darker tone. Again, still being aware of where the shapes of the petals come. You might just do a little bit of like surreptitious, having just gone on about texture, you can do a sweep of dark to sort of firm up that petal edge. And then, because obviously that looks like you've just outlined it and it doesn't look very sort of natural, that's when you then go back in and you texture into that line that you've painted, and then sort of fuzz its edges so it doesn't become too much of an outline. And then again, just on this side round here, whatever shape you've got is going to work, because see what the painter's done and kind of go with that. Here there's more light on it, so we're going to keep the brush stroke really dabby, so we're getting, even if you can get the sort of head of the brush to split up slightly, so you've got a real spiky texture just to come in there. And then as they come down into here, we're getting more kind of like shadow again, so we can do more close together dabs and little spikes. Just to slightly just to sort of like slightly blend that in. Then we've got the sort of triangle of dark shadow in there, and again just working around those shapes. There's a bit more dark than this side needs to be darker. We definitely need to we can use again the brush to just consolidate or define the edge of that petal a bit more, and I'm just going with where I can on that. You know, I'm not thinking too much about the shape that is actually on the flower. I'm just bringing that round, and again I can just take that through. And then I'm just thinking about little points of light and just trying to see those and leave it. Oh, it's almost like little pyramids, isn't it? Little triangles of light coming through. Just sort of like getting that sort of shape in there. And we're just, this sort of dark is also letting us just start to establish kind of the base of the petals, where they kind of break off, you know, and they start spreading out. You can just see this little sort of triangle of darkness kind of coming in there. This petal here I've kind of lost almost completely, but I can sort of like find that again with the brush strokes in a bit. So I'm just going to then darken down in here and in here, and hopefully, yeah, that's getting that a bit more sort of it's really getting that sort of punchy kind of feel. I think it's still a little bit too, I can see that outline more here, so I just want to go in, and I'm going to slightly lighten up, go into the amber, and again come back in with some slightly, very subtly lighter colour, just to sort of break. So I think I need to put a little bit more in here just to stop that being too much of a defined area. So I've made the centre of my flower fatter than the picture, but it really doesn't matter too much. And then I'm going to come in again, I want to get some orange tones. So I'm going back into my orange, and I'm going to keep it orange. I might even try putting a bit of red. I want to get let's see what quite a fiery colour does. I think that's too fiery. I think that's better. So quite a nice, strong, bold orange, and go in with the thin brush. And just start to get that stronger colour, licking, and work up in strips, so it's, you know, be quite bold with it. See where it follows those lines of shadow, and just bring those red tones up just into that sort of section there. And then somehow I've got to make sense of some of the lines going down here. I think I can bring that red glow, because the red has a lovely glowing quality. I'm quite liking the way that's working. So we're being quite bold with the colour. It's a definitely reddy orange. It's not, there's no polite yellow in that. We've definitely got quite a strong red. And I think in here this is going to work too. I think to have some moments of that red orange kind of coming through on these petals, and just to sort of starting to ramp up the colour and the contrast, thinking of sort of hot summer days again. So this is all a bit confused in here, but I'm going to sort of have a go at finding a shape in here and kind of going with it, I think. Again, that one that I kind of invented, I'm going to take that red up and round through it and bring some of that colour through into those petals. Let's sort of bring those sort of round in here. There's quite a strong, I've got this strong petal here where I'm kind of seeing the inside of one twisting around the outside of another. So that's going to come into red. And we can start hopefully seeing some of the finer detail coming through. Just seeing how they move around each other. And then we've got again where I've got that red, that green in, I'm going to go over the top with some of this red colour that I'm using, just to sort of, and again the green's going to knock it back, but the red's going to bring that warmth in it. So the two of them are kind of working together into that section. It's taken some of the green out and it's made it sort of warmer and brighter. And then I've got this very strong line on these petals here, so I'm going to brush those in, start thinking about some of the detail of that kind of coming round here, and I think into that shadow there again. So though it's dark, it's got those red tones in, just to sort of bring that warmth kind of coming up and into here. With this bit here, I'm still wanting to get that a bit darker, and just to take and bring that colour all the way along that sort of big petal, and working again. There's sort of quite a nice bank of shadow in there. This still could be more shadowed, I think. You just sort of keep almost going round, almost like going round a clock face. Just each time we go round, just trying to push a bit more of the detail, seeing if you can make sense of the shapes that you've got, seeing if there's more texture we can bring in. There's a sort of invented petal up here, so I'm going to bring some lines into that, try and make that a bit more determined. This nice end one, that's got, if I look at it again, it's got these sort of lines running up into that centre point, just sort of coming up into that shape there. And if you think it's got too definite, I don't know if it has, but I think I can just, I can just come with a wet brush then, and just before that, while that paint is still live, just soften it a bit again so it's not too heavy, and just take some of these stripes with the where you've got the yellow, you can overlay it with a slightly richer yellow to just to sort of bring those in. And like here, there's quite a lot of brush marks going there, so if I want to, I can come in with quite a watery yellow and just sort of knock that back. There's strong petal here. I still haven't quite worked out. There's this petal here, isn't there, which is actually yellow, so I'm going to see if that works now, because the green's been on there as like an undercoat and it's dried. So let's see if I then, if I get some yellow onto that, it's kind of reclaiming that bit as a petal against it being a leaf. Looking back, this side is still dark, isn't it? There still needs to be a bit more dark and a bit more coolness. Maybe we've got to be quite bold, I think, with this. It's just building up the courage to kind of do it. I'm going to leave this sweep of petal quite yellow, and then here we want to get these, let's get some of this orange tone in, because it's actually helping to darken them down. So on this side, getting some of that orange tone in, leaving that one sort of bright, and then knocking that back with some of that. There's a bit more orange on here on that little green petal that we were just looking about. We've got that sort of orange coming in to the base, and I'm discovering a lot more orange tones in this than, you know, if you think of sunflower, your first thought is always yellow, but see how many orange tones and how much almost redness we're getting into this, that we're discovering in here. And again, coming back round this way and getting that sort of darkness in. So again, let's have a look at this sort of green section now. Let's leave the petals for a little bit and have a look at the, I think there is a word for that green bit. It's not husk, is it? But it's something like sepal or something. I must look it up one day so that I can refer to it in the correct terminology when I'm next painting flowers. So I'm mixing up a sort of a medium tone green, because there's this sort of, this, if you look at this sort of leafy bit here, it's sort of in 3 bumps, isn't it? You can almost see there's a sort of bump there, and then we get a bump sort of coming there, and then a third bump sort of on the side there, and that sort of helped to be defined by the little bits of shadow. And we've got this sort of a line, sort of linear quality of the structure of the leaf, kind of, it's coming over. You can see sort of grooves is what I'm jibbing around trying to say. There's kind of like grooves on it, so you can kind of paint a little bit of those in to kind of get that they've actually got a bit of texture. I've got this little funny sticky out leaf coming around here, and then there's sort of that bit I think here needs to be a little bit darker. And we've got this little fat leaf sitting up on the top here that has sort of been forgotten a little bit. So let's get some darker green, and it's got like it looks like a little fat bird sitting on the top. What it makes me think of. So it's got that edge there in green, and then it's got a sort of tummy, quite a round sort of tummy in the sort of over a bit at the top, and it's got a lovely bit of reflected colour on there. It's actually got a little, if you look at it, there's actually a sort of yellow glow just on this bit where the petal comes down to it. I think that's quite nice to try and put that in, and then we can get, as I've got yellow on my brush, I can get some more yellow onto that petal and just into sort of round there as well. So I'm nipping across while I see it, while I've got it on my brush to kind of get that in. Yeah, so then back on this sort of leaf area. This one here we've got on this sort of like spray leaf that's kind of coming off here. There's actually, if you imagine that being the central vein, we've got some little flicks of green coming up to meet that dark. It just leaves a little margin of light, and then it's sort of got some little flicks coming down off that. The lower half of it is actually much darker, but there's just a little margin of, or a little flash of highlight on that leaf, and then this bit is actually quite a lot darker, so we can get that in a bit darker, and that would hopefully give that a bit of presence, just to sort of give that a bit more structure. And then we've got this leaf, this stem, that's the word I'm grasping for. So it looks quite stripy. It's slightly disappearing, and that's because the background here is actually a lot darker than we've got it at the moment. And this is what I was thinking about. I think I'm going to try, this is one of these ones that you might want to watch and see how I do, because if I completely muck it up then you don't have to do this, but I'm going to try getting a wash of umber over some of this background area, because it is browner and it is darker. So like where I've got this, I'm trying not to do this without masking the stem. So if I bring that brush through there, it looks really dark, but suddenly that stem has appeared, hasn't it? And it's difficult to see because I realise that the light from because it's wet paint, the light is making that whiting out, but as it starts to dry we should see that's going to be darker. It's so much more effective on my side of the camera, sorry about this, and then I'm going to take that umber colour again up into the background, so it's a warmer and a darker tone up here, just to sort of bring that corner, and then it's going to come into this underneath the stem. I'm going to leave that for the moment because I want that to look darker in comparison to the top, and then I can just bring some of this wash of umber down this sort of side, and again get the paint on, and then if you think it looks too is too stripy or spot, too much of a guideline, a division, too obvious a division in your washes, you can then go back with some water and blend that bit into what you've got beforehand. Just sort of soften those and blend them in together. Just keeping that petal, that point the petal does get really dark actually. The more you look at it, the more you see that. Then this edge here, again, this bottom corner is getting darker. So let's get some of that umber colour just in there, just to come in around some of those plants. But that has at least, I think you're just starting to see where the wet is drying on this section. It's just made that stem pop out and made it actually, given it a bit of physicality, so it's actually there as part of the picture. Right, so how are we doing for time? Okay, right, so we've got about 10 more minutes, I suppose, to go. So again, what would I do? Well, I think this is again one of those moments where it's going to be going around again and just seeing if I can make a bit more sense of some of these pieces here. I think we can push some of the shadows on the actual petals still a bit darker. I think again we have to try and be bold and to get the brightness into the other petals. I think we need to, this section down here, I think we need to sort of push that back, to knock it back, to make it a little, what we call knocking back, which is just sort of taking the brightness out of it. So I'm using a little bit of that umber again, thinking about the structure and the shadows where it's falling, but just being bold with those shadows on this section here, so that these ones are really in the shadow, they're really going darker. And if you think they're disappearing too much into the background, then what we can do is darken the background down, so that now I'm painting background, I've painted an outline and it's going to look too strong, but I'm going to come back and with the larger brush and just drag that away so that the outline is softened. It's not going to be too obvious, just to sort of bring that back down, because I think we need to get some stronger shadows into this area. This one here, I think on this one again, this could come, I think we could get some of that umber really to add some depth to that shadow on this sort of petal here. And again, this is very quick, quite an impressionistic study. If you want to get things, if you want to go more in the kind of botanical illustration way of things, then I think you could then try combining drawing first with the and then working on top of that. But I quite like this. I like the sort of freedom this gives you. I think it gives you a kind of the sense of the flower without worrying too much about microscopic detail. I'm going to put some shadow in onto this one underneath here, because I want that to make it look like, and this line here, look, just I want to get some shadow in there, and that hopefully is going to make the petal on top stand out a bit more, you know, because I want to get that bit of this one to look really glowy. And then I think the colour on this one, it can have some more orange tone, so yes, I can put some orange tone in that, and then that becomes shadow. And again, hopefully then this one becomes more sunlit and brighter looking. And again, this bottom section in here, that can have a bit more shadow tone in it. And again, stronger and darker into here. And then hopefully we're getting this sort of shadow line coming across, and that's the kind of effect that we want. This one up in here, I can see that could almost come a bit darker too, just to sort of get that edge of light brighter. And it's the old thing again that I say relentlessly, if you want to make something look brighter, make the things around it darker and keep pushing the shadows around it darker, and it will look brighter and brighter as you kind of turn that back. Think about it, you know, on all the phone apps that we have where you can up the contrast. That's what you want to try and do to get this strong sort of sense of light. So I'm going back in here with some shadow again, and in here, this one, I'm just leaving the tiny tip of this one slightly brighter than the middle section, because it actually is just catching the light there, and hopefully that's starting to get that feeling. I think the camera, or the video camera, is slightly muting the colours I'm getting, because my colours to me are, there's more yellow in them and there's more brightness than you can see on the screen. But I'm just going to make sure that I've got these ones here. So I'm just using a yellow wash here just to flick over, because this is quite a pale colour up here, and I'm just ramping up the yellow power by coming back over, because there's I've been quite hesitant in the colour here, so I just want to come back over where there's a lot of white showing through, and just where I've got these very bright petals, I want to overlay with, again, a good wash of a really strong, pure yellow, just to make those brighter and bolder across through there, and then a little bit on that one, and this one up here as well, just so that's kind of, again, taking that a bit stronger. Now again, it depends on how much detail you like to do. You could go for the really tiny detail brush at this point and kind of go round again. So here's my micro flower painting, really delicate brush. And this is where, you know, if you're a detail person, you can come in and just try and get some of these really strong lines in on the petals, thinking more about the detail of the shape that they give you. If you're a pen drawing person, this might be when you might let it dry and then think about working into it with pens and things over the top to kind of increase the linear quality of some of these lines. But I'm just using, again, little thin strokes. And see where I've got that line of shadow? I'm taking these up to that line of shadow as if it's sort of like a gateway that they can't pass over. So just bringing that up, keeping that line of shadow, and then I can go with a lighter version of that colour into the highlight section, and it hopefully just helps to get that feeling. And I'm just going to soften that and drag it across that brighter section, because I want to try and get that feeling of this strong shadow that's being cast across these petals, almost like a line of shadow kind of coming up and just coming round. And there's a bit of dryness in this paint here, so I'm going to just work in some shadow coming under here, just this shadow colour again. And this is when we can go and, like, this leaf here has got a really sort of like a sort of half moon, a long stretched out half moon shape of shadow, which can come in under there. So I can see that as a shape on the petal, and then outline that, almost like drawing it with a paintbrush, and then just let that kind of, oh sorry, I got my headphone cable stuck around it here. And then there's really quite strong, I've done some of the lines here, but again, now I can come with the smaller brush and bring those, sort of exaggerate them maybe a little bit, get those really strong ridges happening going over it in those on some of these ones. And if you ever think they're too stripy, again, just go back with very wet pigment or wet brush and blend them in a bit more. But we're starting to get into that sort of fine detail. I don't think we'd have time to get all the detail in, but you know, you can go round and add again. If you want to come back with like a white gouache or an acrylic, a watered down acrylic, you could go back to add more punch into some of the highlights in the same kind of way. So like on this petal, I can see there's like a strong little overlap there, which I can just put in with that fine brush. And then this shape down here, probably slightly greener than I'm doing it, but we can sort of start to keep going back over and keep on. And it's as much detail as you want to get in. It's this thing with flowers, they're always really detailed. This has got a bit mucky, that's a shame. But, you know, it's so... I can then try and bring that up a bit sort of stronger. I've got slightly lost in this section, but, you know, also it's still quite dynamic, so let's not worry too much about that. But I can then just sort of just bring some of these lines curling round. And up here on this one, I can see there's sort of a bank of shadow although it's bright, there's still shadow, there's still lines that I can explore, and I can pull down through the flower just to sort of see where they go and see if I can add that little extra texture sort of coming round on here. And so again, it's just like finding the shape, finding the rhythm of those leaves, letting your brush pull those colours down into sort of shapes and seeing the textures and realising quite how much texture there is going on these petals. Again, you know, we always think of them as being almost smooth, flat, and they're not at all. They've got all these folds and lines and bumps kind of coming round And I can come back again with a really dark brush and be very delicate with sort of the shadow and the structure around here. Just sort of like, again, try and make it make sense for your painting. Don't worry too much about whether it matches reality, because reality is overrated. And we're just going to come round and just start, and then this area here, this could have some more sort of dark detail, and we could come round and add this in. And you could do the same thing on the green section. We can bring sort of more detail into with the finer brushes. And again, you might want to leave this for overnight and come back and then work on it when it's really thoroughly dry. As I said, I think I've said before, I'm not adverse to ironing a piece if it needs it. If you are going to iron it, do it between two pieces of clean paper, not straight on your iron, and don't do it on the steam setting. You want to turn the steam off. Otherwise, you're just going to saturate your paper and, you know, cause all sorts of problems. So, but again, this is then just, I would then spend my time just refining all these little details and starting to really sharpen up some of the shapes that I've got going on here. But not too much. I don't want to make it really stiff. I think you still want to leave, you know, some movement and some light in it. But I think we're going to bring that to a close there. But hopefully we've seen that this is a sunflower. We've got the sense of light. We've got this nice different angle on the sunflower. So we see it's sunflower, but it's not your standard sort of fried egg in the middle, petals around the outside kind of look. And I think it's still capturing a lot of that heat and colour of a very summer's day, which maybe at some point in this summer will happen for us too. So there we go.